Hey guys, what's up? I'm out here in nature again. Gonna do another one of these lyric analysis videos. I'm not doing them that often, but there's like certain songs that I have that I like to talk about, and kind of talk about the lyrics and talk about the meaning. And yeah, so this one's called Dreading Fear, and I'm gonna go line by line again, and just kind of analyze the lines. And I will say before I continue that if you guys are interested in my lyrics, I have genius lyric sites of all these songs out there that you guys can check out if you guys are interested. But yeah, without further ado, let me get into the lyrics of Dreading Fear. I know that you see that I look away. Dreading fear to the goal is not okay. I know that you see that I look away. Dreading fear to the goal is not okay. I like lyrics that are metaphorical. When I was younger, I played a lot with metaphor and analogy. And one of my favorite rappers is Eminem, and I think he does this a lot in terms of really kind of using metaphors to kind of express some of his deeper experiences. And this song was one song that I actually wrote many years ago when I was around 13 or so. And I really liked kind of the sentiment behind fear, and specifically dreading fear and what that means. So it's kind of a double entendre, because on one hand, dreading fear means being scared of fear. But on the other hand, it also means, and this is kind of the main meaning that I have with it, was more like intense fear. Fear that is dreading, fear that is dreading in terms of intensity. So, you know, I like to play with meanings like that. I wrote the song when I was like 12 or 13, so back then I just liked words. I didn't always think about meanings, I just thought about words, and I thought about word combinations. And this track kind of evolved from that. But the message of the song now for me is the idea of not being scared of things, and basically not being scared to, if you have a goal, to pursue the goal. So it's kind of a very holistic track for that reason. But when I say dreading fear to the goal is not okay, it basically means don't be scared to reach whatever goal you may have. That's kind of the way to translate that. And I know that you see that I look away is, it's kind of dialogue. This track has a lot of dialogue where there's kind of like these two characters communicating with each other. And I know that you see that I look away is kind of one person talking to the other person. It's almost like a friend talking to a friend, and the friend recognizes that the other friend is scared to reach their goal, and they're kind of encouraging them. That's kind of how I interpret that. If you were to describe the tension that you feel in the world, it would be described as the climax of problems through your upper tension building life. You cannot be afraid to chase the path that is laid out so clearly and strong, for you are the one who lives your life all along. So, kind of a similar thing, you know, it's really interesting with the song is I'm kind of, like, the chorus is almost like different ways of kind of finding one sentiment. And the second part is, you know, kind of a similar type of thing. You know, kind of going with the conversation of somebody in trauma and what trauma really means, thinking about those intricacies and those kind of ideas. And, you know, for me, like, an upper tension building life is a life full of tension, a life full of anxiety and despair. So for me, what that kind of is almost like, you know, your life is taking its turn because you're not following your goals, and it's being, things are building up until you're kind of all of a sudden you've kind of made a mess that you can't get out of, and you're trapped, and that's kind of what it feels like. And you know, I think everybody's kind of had moments like that. But, you know, again, it's interesting with these lyrics because they're so kind of filled with metaphor that there's kind of purposely different ways to kind of take them. But, you know, just the idea of kind of what it means to not be scared to achieve a goal and how that really manifests and how that changes throughout different relationships and kind of throughout your life. And yeah, I'm just kind of thinking about, I guess with this part, just kind of like, how is it, you know, what's the importance of achieving a goal and how does that really get you, you know? And I guess to bring it deeper into kind of social contexts, I read a lot about politics and my indigenous identity and my indigenous kind of feeling. And, you know, when you're constantly invisible and you're constantly not really looked at and acknowledged by the mainstream, which is an experience that minorities can have, then it leaves you feeling filled with despair, and it leaves you feeling a certain way that you can't really comprehend sometimes. And I've had this in classes where I feel like, you know, like the aesthetic of a class or the aesthetic of an environment will make you feel isolated even if you don't want that. So if I'm thinking about, you know, kind of like the upper tension building life and the extreme tension of a life filled with despair and like kind of how that manifests, I'm thinking too about, you know, if you're constantly in environments that make you feel invisible, then that can also contribute to all of a sudden you live this life that's really unpredictable and you don't know what's going to happen in terms of your own emotions. You know, of course, life is always unpredictable, but it's like there's kind of a deeper thing there. And I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at with that whole kind of aesthetic. What are you doing? Tell me that I know who you are. Because of the segments that are mentioned with the badass drama in your life, let it go, let it fall, slowly through the veins of your broken heart. Let it go, let it fall, slowly through the veins of your broken heart. This part of the track kind of gets into the conversation of identity. And, you know, the idea of like the first part of this for me is kind of, once again, I like playing with the idea of kind of dialogue and conversation. I'm almost picturing this a little bit like a movie, and these friends kind of talking to each other and what that creates. And the beginning of this, what are you doing? Tell me that I know who you are, because of the segments that are mentioned with the badass drama in your life. So tell me that I know who you are is kind of one friend telling the other friend that, you know, you have this persona that you've created for yourself. Tell me that that's not a lie. You know, so for me, it's like, it's almost like a character that's kind of been really confident and kind of eluded himself or themselves in a certain way, but then after that is actually very, all of a sudden kind of very depressed and not who they really are. So that's kind of what that's playing with. And, you know, for me, I've been in situations in my life where, you know, you kind of question like what kind of person are you and like what kind of aesthetic do you want to create in your life. You know, I guess what that means is like, you know, for me it's like I feel like I'm kind of, sometimes I lose myself in places and I don't know like what's gonna happen. So for me, like, tell me that I know who you are is also kind of like, you know, I don't know. It's just I have places in my life where I feel like I don't really belong, and then that messes with my identity, and it kind of causes me to become this other person and this other construct, you know. And that's a really real experience. That's a really real thing. So that's kind of the first part of that. Yeah, Earth didn't just go. Everything that you need, every step you need, every breath you take is what you do. Earth has me do this in the strong desire. Upper mandibles, yo. Up and out of school, falling out. You know, this kind of takes it back around to the theme of this, which is like kind of ambition and confidence in achieving your goals, which I talked about before. And this part of the song is actually probably the most literal out of the whole track, because it's a very metaphorical track on purpose. But if you guys listen to my other songs, I actually write a lot about, like, my main body of work is very much about kind of social justice, looking into indigenous issues, looking at the fact that indigenous people are still invisible, and kind of understanding like totalitarian kind of thought in a broad way throughout these different tracks and kind of the effects of those. And Earth Didn't Just Go, for me, is actually my way of bringing that into the song, because the song is very kind of poetic in kind of the best way. Like, the lyrics are very much kind of based off of more kind of obscure ideas that have kind of created this certain kind of thing in my life and kind of experiences. And Earth Didn't Just Go, for me, is climate change. The idea that, people say that, the climate's always been changing, but of course one of the big things now is that climate change is actually a real thing, and the Earth is dying. It does feel that way, and it is, because humans have created that, humans have kind of implemented that. And so Earth Didn't Just Go really brings it into the idea of the fact that, no, Earth did not just die randomly, because we are in this place where Earth is kind of worse off than it was in the past. And it's the idea that, like, okay, Earth is not just gone. It came from somewhere, and it came from people. So, like, one of my favorite, and I just kind of plugged him to, at time of recording this, I just plugged him to a class I was in today. And one of my favorite people and poets and kind of thinkers in this regime is John Friedel. He's a Santee spoken word artist. And, what's really interesting is he talks a lot about, like, this very indigenous concept of the 7 generations, which, basically looks at, what you do will affect everything else. So whatever choice you make now, you have to look 7 generations behind you, how that choice was made, how it manifested, and then 7 generations in the future, how that choice was made, how it manifested. So the line after Earth Didn't Just Go, where I say, everything that you need, every step you need, every breath you take is what you do. And that's basically asserting responsibility. And it's really thinking about the fact that everything that we do does have an effect. And it's not, it's easy sometimes to kind of connect ourselves to a higher power and kind of look at what that higher power does. But we have to remember that if we make a wrong choice, it's our responsibility to fix it, and something that we did. And we can't kind of put that off into some other entity. And that's what that's saying. So it's everything that you need, every step you need is what you do. Earth has me do this in the strong desire. Again, what I'm saying there is kind of talking about all this comes from the Earth. And the fact that Earth is in this place and the understanding of the natural world, the importance of that, means that it's inevitable that these things will have to be discussed in order to move forward. So that's kind of what I'm saying there. And, again, it's really interesting with that part, because that part really is probably the most literal of the whole song, because the whole song is very kind of based off of identity and ambition and power and confidence and kind of these things that, I thought about as a kid. Because I guess another thing I'll say too with this track, it kind of stemmed from a feeling I had as a kid oftentimes, where I felt very kind of isolated for different reasons, and where that isolation came from. And I think that kind of played into these lyrics, where, they're lyrics that are purposely kind of very up for interpretation, but I think that also very much has, like, root and is grounded in certain ways. So, I don't know if this song, or like parts of the song, kind of make people think about the broader image of, like, even what poetry does in a broad way, because it's so holistic as a track. It doesn't really pin down certain things, except for the climate change thing. At least in an immediate way, I think it kind of allows for people to think about things their own way. So I guess what this song is too is kind of a broader ode to what poetry does in general, making us think, making us kind of question and kind of dance around these ideas of things. And just the power of conversation and kind of what conversation does, and kind of the importance of that. So I guess that's what I'll say. If you guys are interested, there's the Genius link below this video, and the song itself is a great composition I did, that's kind of centered around steel drum too, and vocal percussion, and kind of those elements kind of the way they flow. The song is actually focused more on the music than the lyrics, so kind of being able to talk about the lyrics a little bit was fun. But yeah, check out my other videos and check out all my music, and stay safe, guys. Hey guys, it's RicoR. Thank you guys so much for watching this Genius analysis video. Please be sure to check out the Genius lyric site alongside it, link below this video, where there's written versions of a lot of the stuff I'm talking about in the video, as well as some stuff that's not in the video. And also please be sure to check out the original studio recordings. Thank you guys so much, and cheers.